everybody. Okay, let's get going. We're holding now in part 3, I think. Is that what I said? Part 3 of Torah Yud, Torah number 10. And we're getting into some of the meaty aspects of it. And today we're going to finish up the concepts that we were dealing with last time. And then the following week, next week, we'll be getting into this interesting idea of dancing and clapping hands, and how that comes out in a Breslov way. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming. Please go to the YouTube channel, Breslov Thornhill, and subscribe and like the videos. Please go to the BRI channel and subscribe and like the videos. And the more people who subscribe and share, the more people get to hear the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. Bezras Hashem. Okay, so this Torah started off like this. We'll do a very quick review. We started off by saying that whenever there's a time of dinim and negativity, judgments against the Bnei Yisrael, that dancing and hand clapping is the fix, is what is mamtik the dinim, sweetens up those judgments. And then we said that the main greatness of Hashem is when people from far away come close to Hashem. Like the famous Yisrael, like, as we explained, that applies to every individual in their own way. Coming from far away close to Hashem makes the greatest glorification of the name of Hashem. And then we said, so that means that the biggest glorification is going to come, welcome Larry, is going to come from when you have a non-Jew coming from a faraway place and coming close to Hashem, like happened with Yisrael, who was the Avodah Zarah expert of the entire world and was the priest of Midian. And when he came close to Hashem, the Zohar says that was the biggest glorification of the name of Hashem. So that's a non-Jew coming to Hashem is the biggest. That's what he says in the Lashon is Gedulasei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the best. But a non-Jew cannot get to this level until they are able to experience Hashem, we said, from the Bechina of Yaakov Avinu, not Yitzchak and not Avraham, but Yaakov Avinu, who related to Hashem in the Bechina of Bias, house. And we said there's mountain, which was Avram Avinu, which means Hashem is off in the distance. Like you might see a mountain if you're in Calgary right now, Shalom Steinberg. And then we said that there's the field. Field is a little bit of a closer relationship to our general life. Something more intimate, something that I understand a little bit more, that I'm a little bit more connected to. That's the next level. But the final level is Beis Yaakov, is the house of Yaakov, which means that I relate to Hashem as a bias, as a house, as something that I'm intimately familiar with, something that I live with, something that is part of me. When the tefillah is elevated to that level, so that even the non-Jews in the world can relate to Hashem in this way, of bias, have an intimate connection, an intimate, close, familiar connection, then that's going to be what's going to draw the non-Jews towards Hashem, and there's going to be a great glorification of the name of Hashem. And we said many psukim to bring this all together, of course. And then we said that the only way to elevate tefillah, when we elevate tefillah to the highest level, it brings emunah into the world. It brings elokus into the world, godliness into the world. And when people see that a tzaddik is able to daven, and things happen, and things change in the world, that brings emunah. That brings faith in Hashem, and that shows the bichin of bias. That shows an intimately relatable aspect of Hashem that draws people in. And when the tefillah, prayer, is elevated to that level, then that's when the non-Jews are able to come close to Hashem. People that are far away are able to come close to Hashem. So we said, Rabbi Nachman said in Anois Dalet, the only way that happens is through tzaddikim. It's through the tzaddikei hador, the tzaddikim of the generation. And without them, we can't get to this level. And then we spent most of the time last week talking about this concept that Rabbeinu said afterwards, that there's people who actively try to stop people from connecting to tzaddikim. There's false leaders false influences that will try to stop us from connecting to tzaddikim, that will try to stop us from davening, from going to kivrei tzaddikim, from going to meet live tzaddikim, and they'll say that you don't need to go there, all you need is to be with me. And I'm already a tzaddik, I can daven for you, say such people, and you don't have to worry about that. And this false leader is one big bundle of gaiva, of arrogance. And when someone who is full of arrogance, when someone who is full of arrogance is put in a position of leadership, it's game over. It's disaster. It's the last thing you want to find in a leader is the trait of arrogance. And so we said that that's what has to be. These are the people that try to hold people back from going to tzaddikim, from connecting to the real holy people. And then we said this concept of Ashes. The pasuk said by Avram Avinu when he was by Avimelech with Sarah, they said, return this man to his wife to him. Hashev Ashes Ha'ish. And we said Ashes is an acronym for three things. Hashem Svasai Tiftach, which is the words that we say before prayer. And what is meant on a deeper level from this pasuk is we need to return Hashem Svasai Tiftach to the tzaddik. We have to give back the prayer to that tzaddik. In other words, if we have too much ego, we'll think I don't need anyone else. I don't need a tzaddik. I myself can take care of it. I already can daven. I'm already holy enough. I don't need to go to a tzaddik. Or if you're one of these leaders who tries to prevent people from going to tzaddikim, then you can say you don't need to go to that tzaddik. You stick with me. I'll pray for you already. I'm already good enough. We don't want this. We want to return the tefillah to the tzaddikim. As we said, the Gemara tells us that Hashem desires the tefillahs of the tzaddikim. That's what Hashem wants to hear. Hashem wants the tefillahs of the tzaddikim. He wants us to go to the tzaddikim. And everyone who's been in these classes for a long time, for a year or two, they'll know that one of the things we talk about a lot is that the concept of tzaddik is very big in Breslov. And the concept of going to tzaddikim is very big in Breslov. And it's one of those things that many people are not used to hearing. And they are not used to hearing it because it's a concept that has been lost a little bit, that's been brought down. When really, we know that this is something that if you look into the Gemara, the Chumash even, the Gemara, if you look into the Zohar HaKadosh, the Midrashim, everywhere, we talk about the importance of the tzaddik to the Jewish people, and the importance of having the tzaddik right there, to the extent that we know that in the Chumash, I know you guys have heard this before, but let's say it anyway. In the Chumash, when the 12 spies went into the land, and they went to spy out the land, and there was 2 of those spies were holy, and 10 of them were on an evil mission. Right? The one, Kalev ben Yefune, the holy Kalev ben Yefune, what's the first thing he did when he went into the land? He went right away to Hebron, to the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, to the cave of the patriarchs, in order to daven in the schus of Avram Avinu and Sarah that were there, and Yitzchak and Rivka and Yaakov and Leah that were there. To daven there in that spot. Right in the Chumash we see this. Right? We see right in the Chumash by Shiras Hayom, after the sea split, after the splitting of the Red Sea. Right? What does the pasuk say? Vayaminu b'Hashem. And does it end there? They believed in Hashem. Does it end there? No, it does not. It says Vayaminu b'Hashem uveMoshe avdoi. They believed in Hashem and in Moshe, his servant. There's always been Moshe Rabbeinu. And when it was time for Moshe to be finished and to go to Shemayim, and he had to give it over to Yeshua, what does the pasuk say over there? It says, Hashem said to Moshe, go find a man, ish asher ruach boy, a man that has ruach in him. Take Yeshua, and turn him into the next leader. He had to be the next Tzaddik Hador. Everywhere we see, we always had this, and if you learn in the Zohar over and over again, we see this hundreds of times, the concept of Tzaddik Hador, Tzaddik Yesod Olam, that the Tzaddik stands in the tzinor, says the Zohar, in the pipe, where all the Shefa comes into the world. Everything comes through the Tzaddik Hador. Tzaddikim are tremendously important, and unfortunately, there's been negative forces, like the forces that Rabbi Nachman is talking about here. In one way, there's ego out there that tries to suppress this concept, and many leaders from many different aspects of Judaism will try and knock down this concept. And then we also have, we've been hurt over the years by false leaders that have caused tremendous disaster. Shabbat Tzvi Yimach Shemai, he was a false messiah. And from his personality, his tremendous personality that thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews went after him, his personality was so strong and so powerful and so charismatic that he took so many Yidden down with him. We're a little bit afraid, to go after tzaddikim in this way. But we have to know that this is in our essence, to be close to tzaddikim. We need to return the tefillah to the tzaddikim. Like the pasuk says, Hashev Eshes Ha'ish. Return Eshes. Return Hashem Svasai Tiftach. Return the idea of tefillah back to the tzaddik. And then we said Hashev. The word Hashev is Rosh Tevis for an acronym for Har, Sadeh, and Bias. The tzaddik is the one who can take tefillah and put it into all these packages. Put it into Har, which is that distant view, and Field, which is a little bit closer, all the way to Bias, to that intimate connection that we can all feel. Through connecting to the Tzaddik Hador, we can experience tefillah in Bias, in the most intimate possible way. And that's where we got up till now. And we said that this is very important, that we stay away from leaders who are Balei Gaiva, and we stay close to the tzaddikim who are humble. And we saw, by the way, just one more thing to remember, that we saw in that story of Avimelech and Avram Avinu going over there, that why, how does Avimelech fit into the story, into Rabbi Nachman's Torah over here? Avimelech, the word Avi, has a lashon of desire. It says by Bilam that it uses the lashon of Av over there to be a lashon of desire, of wanting. So Avi means to desire, means to want, and Melech, of course, means to be the Melech, means to rule, means to have sharara, to have authority over people. Avi Melech, I want to have authority over people. That is the paradigm we're talking about over here of the egotistical false leader. I want to rule over people. I want my authority to be accepted. I want to have control over people. This is the type of leader that we want to stay far away from. Avi Melech, I want to be in control. I want to be this leader. So we have this job that we have to connect it to the tzaddikim. So Rabbi Nachman is now going to bring a pasuk from Sefer Bereshis, which we're going to see now how this concept that we've been talking about fits in to this pasuk over here, and is brought out on a deeper reading of this pasuk. So the pasuk says like this. Just one second. It says like this. Vayehi merikim sakehem. Let me read this in English, and then we'll go into the Torah. And it happened as they began emptying their sacks, emptying their bags. So let's just give a little bit more background over here. This story is happening after the brothers of Yosef HaTzadik came the first time to see him in Mitzrayim, and they didn't know it was him yet. They came to take food back to the family in Eretz Canaan because of the terrible famine that was going on, right? And so Yosef sent them back, and he put money, kesef, money, into their bags to take back with them, right? That's what happened on a surface level. We have to remember that the last thing we said in our class last week was that this person who becomes a Baal Gaiva, who becomes arrogant and thinks he can be the tzaddik, Rabbeinu said, the mashal, that he's like a sack, a bag, that's full of holes. That even after it's emptied out, it's still a bag full of holes. Meaning what? Even if a person fasted and did sigufim and worked on themselves a little bit by fasting and afflicting themselves, right? And they think, I've vanquished my physical desires. I've vanquished my taivas. Now I'm the tzaddik. Rabbi Nachman says, They emptied out their sack. They emptied out their taivas, their physical desires. They knocked something out, but they didn't fix the root of the problem. Do you remember this? They didn't fix the root of the problem. They're still just a bag full of holes. They're still broken. They still haven't made a tikkun. They still haven't fixed themselves up yet. And this person is the Baal Gaiva who wants to lead over everybody else. And the arrogance of this person will not allow it to work. So this is important. And the Gemara, we saw in the Gemara, that the Gemara said by one of the brightest scholars of the period of the Tanaim, of the Mishnah, the Gemara said, Shinana, sharp one, Shari Sakacha, open up your sack. Your sack means bag, right? Your sack. Meaning, you have to feed yourself. You can't be a Talmud Chacham, you can't learn, you can't study, you can't become great if you're not healthy. You have to feed yourself. The main point is, the Gemara is telling us that the body, in a certain way, is referred to as a sack, as a bag, as a sack, like the English word sack. Because the body is the container, the kli for the neshama. So, if your body is still this person, if he became holy, he fasted, he did sigufim, he afflicted himself, and he thinks he's the biggest tzaddik, but Rabbeinu says no, he's still like a sack that's full of holes, meaning his goof, his body has not been fixed, his taivas have not been fixed. And he said that if he would just be misbainin, if he would just contemplate his own existence for a short time, he would realize that his taivas are still there, as strong as ever. They're still strong. His taivas, his physical desires are still there. He's like a bag full of holes, a broken vessel still. He's not the tzaddik. So, with that in mind, that the Gemara is telling us that the body is a sack, is a bag, and Rabbeinu is telling us that this mashal, that if you haven't completely fixed yourself up, you're still a sack that has holes in it. You're not fixed yet. Now we have a different vision of this pasuk. Pasuk said, so this is what happened. They went and they opened up their bags, their sacks, and they saw that there was money there, that Yosef had put money in there. And then they became very afraid. They saw and their father saw. They saw and their father saw the bundles of money that were in there, and they became very afraid. And their father, Yaakov, said to them, Oisi shikaltem, you're making me lose my children. Yosef enenu, Yosef is gone, Shimon is gone, and now you want to take Binyamin? All of these terrible things are happening to me, says Yaakov Avinu. That's in the English. The last thing we have to remember in order to understand this properly is we said that not only do we have in our lives to deal with our own physical desires that we have developed throughout our lives, but we also have to deal with the physical desires that have been implanted into us from birth. From, as Rabbi Nachman says over here, that from when our father was not in the proper mind frame, b'shas zivug, at the time when we were conceived, as a result of that, we have implanted within us certain physical desires that come about because of just the way we're born. Some people, by the way, are disturbed by this. To think that in two ways. First of all, I have to have something given to me from my parents because my parents weren't in a state of complete holiness at the moment I was conceived. So I have all this on me. Or maybe as a parent, we might think, oh my gosh, what did I do to my child? Yeah, I'm not always a perfect tzaddik. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I wasn't always in the most spiritual mind frame in those intimate moments. What did I do to my poor kids? You might think, right? So we just have to remember, just so we don't get too upset and crazy over this. We have to remember this is just understanding the pekel that we have when we go into when we go into our life. When we enter into our life, so we have a certain set of circumstances to deal with. And it's meant to be this way. We're supposed to have certain challenges. And some of them we're going to sort of develop as we go through life. We're going to make certain mistakes, or we're going to encounter certain things that are going to put new experiences and new challenges onto us. And some things we're born with. Right? Some things are just there because that's how we were born. And yeah, it's coming from our parents. We have a spirit, just like we have physical genes, right? We also have spiritual genes. And our parents put something into us. But that's meant for us. That's our whole purpose, is to deal with these things. It doesn't matter where they came from, right? This is what we have to do. We shouldn't be so upset. But we have to remember that we have our own things to deal with, and we have the things that came from our parents that we have to deal with. And with all that, now let's see how this fits into these psukim in Bereshis in a gorgeous way. It says like this. So we're on, by the way, page 124 in the BRI, Reb Chaim Kramer, English one. Shortly before, in the middle of Ois Daled in the Hebrew. V'zeh perush. And this is the explanation of, in Bereshis, Vayhi, hey merikim sakehem, v'hine ish tzur kaspoi b'sakoi. And it was when they were emptying out their bags. They were emptying out their baggage, right? They opened their sacks, and they saw that the bundle of money was still there. Rabbeinu says like this, on a deeper level, this is talking about this exact situation. Achar kol hatanesim, after all the fasts, all of the afflictions that this person gave to himself. Shehu harakas hasak, that's emptying out the bag, that's emptying your sack. That's taking the physicality out of your existence. Bichinas aguf, the sack, the bag refers to the person's body. Even after afflicting oneself and fasting. Adayan still, v'hine ish tzor kasboi. The bundle of money is still tied there. Shekashur v'tzorer kasboi v'taivasei besakoi v'gufoi. Still the person's taivas, physical desires, are still bound up in that person. They haven't been totally fixed. There's no tikkun that's happened yet. Kesef comes from the lashon of kisuf. Kisuf, what does that mean? Hebrew experts, it means to desire, to want. Kisufin. Ka echsoif, the song we sing on Shabbos. Hashem, I long for you. Right? In Yedid Nefesh, the lashon comes up also, the song, right? Kisufin means desires, longing. The kesef was still tzror, was still bound up together in that person. They haven't fixed themselves completely. And they saw that their kisufim, their desires, were still bound up, them and their fathers. Is what the pasuk says. Hema v'avihem. They saw that they were still completely wrapped up in these taivas, in these kisufim. Hanu loy dai b'tzoris kaspehem. Not enough that they had to deal with their own taivas, shu taivas atzman, their own taivas. Hema v'avihem. Even their fathers also. Hanu had taivas shel avihem, the physical desires that are brought to them from their parents. Gam hema loy naflu mehem. They haven't broken out of those either. V'zehu vayira'u. And this is what it means, what it says after that they were afraid. They finally got it. They were afraid. They saw, after everything we did, those taivas are still there. I didn't really fix them. Now I'm afraid. Ki charada nafla aleihem. A tremendous fear fell over them. Vazai loy hayaroitzin lehistarer velimloich. And then they did not want to rule over and have authority over anyone anymore. They finally understood, maybe I'm not that person. Right? So in other words, like Rabbeinu said before, when they finally were mizboinein, they contemplated and they opened up their sack to see what's going on with me. Then when they looked really deeply, that's when they found what was missing. That's when they found that they were still in this shape. V'zeh perush, and this is what the pasuk means. Vayomer lehem Yaakov avihem oisi shikaltem. This is what it means when Yaakov said to them, Yaakov their father said to them, you have made me childless. You've taken away my children. Yosef einenu. Yosef isn't here anymore. Ze remaz al toichachas haseichel. So the fact that Yaakov, their father, was now telling them that you're making a big mistake over here. That's referring to toichachas haseichel. That means a person's intellect, their seichel, is what is opening the situation up, allowing them to see what's going on. Because it's seichel that gives teichacha, that gives rebuke. A person's own seichel, a person's own intellect, is what gives them rebuke if they're becoming too much of a bal gaiva, if they're becoming too arrogant. Ki Yaakov hu bechinas seichel, because Yaakov, we've seen this before, refers to seichel, wisdom, chachma. How do we see that? Like the Targum Onkelos says in the pasuk in Bereshis, by the story of Esav, when Esav says that Yaakov, you outsmarted me twice. He says the lashon of vayakveni, you Yaakovified me. Vayakveni, that's really what it is. And what does it mean? The Targum Onkelos says v'chakmeni, you outsmarted me. Yaakov, the word Yaakov, is connected to chachma. Yaakveni, the Targum says, is chachmeni. You outsmarted me. Yaakov represents, in a big way, we saw this also in Torah Aleph, Yaakov represents chachma and seichel. So Yaakov saying to them, you messed up. That represents, in this view of these psukim, the seichel of a person, showing them where they messed up, showing them that they're not such a tzaddik. And as Rabbeinu said before, this happens when a person is finally misboinen. So let's take a break and let's talk about the incredible importance of his boinenus and his boidedus. Right? They're two similar things. Just that, his boinenus is a very commonly used term, and it just means contemplation. It comes from the shurish of the word bina, which means to think about and to understand. And in the deeper lashon, it says that you to understand something, zeh mizeh, one thing from another. So to think and to go back and forth and to really understand something, to contemplate something, to think about the importance of something. That's his boinenus. And of course, his boidedus, which is number one in Breslov. It means to be alone, to seclude oneself and talk to Hashem. So it's not just contemplation; it's going through maybe the same exact things, but in a method of tefillah, of prayer, talking to Hashem, his boidedus, right? Only once a person is able to do this, only once a person starts to think and starts to contemplate using their seichel to really look into themselves, not using their seichel to look and judge other people, using their seichel to judge themselves, to look into themselves, then they are able to finally see what's going on. Toichachas seichel, a person's own seichel. I know many of the people who are listening right now or watching, right? I know you're thinking exactly about many times that you finally woke up. Something happened, and you woke up, and you started to look at yourself, and you started to say, I see that there's some things that I have to change. I see that there's some things that have been going on with me, and I've gotten little hints from here and there, and you started to contemplate, and you started to think about it, and you started to become a new person, right? This is the way that tshuva is going to happen. So this is what he's saying over here. Yaakov represents the seichel, and the seichel says something's not right. Only once you start to use it. V'zeh avihem. And this is what it's meant when it said that it was their father, Yaakov, who said this, avihem, their father. Ki av bechachma, because av refers to chachma. The father refers to chachma. So just we'll make a quick Kabbalistic reference over here. So it's still not too much. Everyone knows the concept of the Esser Sfiros, for sure, the 10 Sfiros, right? And probably everyone knows the concept of the Partsufim, which are a different structure of the 10 Sfiros. So in the Partsufim, the Sfiros are broken up in a slightly different way. We have in a sphera, we have the sphera Keser, which is the top. And in the Partsufim, Keser is called Arich Anpin. Arich. Then Chochma and Bina, which are the next two spheres, are in Partsufim Abba ve'Ima, father and mother, Chochma and Bina. And then the next 6 spheres of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod are in one Partsuf called Zer Anpin. And then, of course, the last of the spheres, Malchus, is the female counterpart to Zer Anpin, which is called the Nukva of Zer Anpin. But what do we see over here? We see that the Partsuf of Chochma is called Abba, is called father, and the Partsuf of Ima of Bina is called Ima. Av b'Chochma. Av, the concept of father, is connected to Chochma, to wisdom, to Seichel. So when this pasuk says that it was Yaakov, their father, that was giving over to them, it's Yaakov, which is Chochma, Chachmeni, and it's their father, Av, which is Abba, which is the sphere of Chachma. This is the Seichel that has to be used to figure things out, to become a better person. You hear this? It's mamash gorgeous. So the father says, Oisi shikaltem, you're taking away my children. Ki kol hamizgah chachmaso mistalekas mimeni. Because any time that a person becomes arrogant, the Gemara says this. Any time a person becomes arrogant, the Gemara in Pesachim says this, his wisdom leaves him. Bye-bye to his wisdom. A person who becomes arrogant, chachmasoi mistalekes mimenu. So Chachma says, I'm Chachma. My children are Chachma. When you become a Bal Gaiva, all the Chachma starts leaving. Not good. V'Yosef einenu. Then the next thing it says is Yosef einenu. Yosef, my son, is not here. Zebechinas tikun ha'me'uvas. So now you might think that this is a advice on how to run a therapy session. Maybe a 12-step program, right? Because you have over here, we have personal contemplation. What's one of the other steps in the 12-step program? You have making amends, right? So, tikkun ha'me'uvas. This is what it says. Yosef einenu. Yosef refers to tikkun ha'me'uvas, making amends, fixing the things that were wrong in the past. Hainu adayin lo tikantem ha'me'uvas. So says Rabbeinu, you still haven't fixed that there was in the past. Shula chirpa v'lekaloin, that it's an embarrassment and it's degrading to you. You should be embarrassed. You haven't fixed everything yet. You're still in that place. You still have that taiva attached to you completely. Ki tikun ha'me'uvas hu b'chinas Yosef, but tikun ha'me'uvas is the aspect of Yosef. So in other words, like this, where these psukim are showing us a picture of this existence that we're talking about, where a person becomes arrogant because they think that they've done all of the work, that they've become a tzaddik, they learned a little bit of Torah, they did a little bit of fasting, and they did a little bit of praying, maybe they did some hisbodedus, and now they think, oh, I am a Breslov tzaddik, right? So, says Rabbeinu over here, you have stuff to be embarrassed about. You haven't fixed everything yet. You should be ashamed of yourselves, is what Rabbeinu is saying right now. You have something to be ashamed of. You're not a tzaddik. You didn't clean yourself out completely. And so you have embarrassment, right? So why is Yosef the key to fixing up that which was broken, to tikkun ha'me'uvas, to making the amends with yourself? Al Shem, because the pasuk says in Bereshis, Asaf Elokim es cherpasi, that he gathered in my cherpa, my embarrassment. So when Yosef was born, what did Rachel say? Her first son was born. She was married to Yaakov, and Leah was having child after child, and she was barren. And she gave her handmaiden over, and the handmaiden's having children, and Rachel's still barren. and the other handmaiden, and Rachel's still barren. And this whole time she feels terrible. She's in the worst state of feeling so negative about the situation. She has tremendous embarrassment. Anybody who knows what goes on with a person who can't have children, there's tremendous pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of difficulty. There's many stories of couples, especially ladies, who were not able to have children for a long time, and they can't go to a shul and just see everybody with their children. It's too painful for them. There was a book written on this subject. I think it's called something like the 3 Keys. I think it's called the 3 Keys. And they brought a study down over there that said that the pain of a childless woman, the emotional pain of a childless woman, is more serious and worse than the emotional pain of a terminally ill patient. It's so serious. So there was a tremendous pain that Rachel had, and tremendous embarrassment. Everyone else is having children. Everyone else is providing children to Yaakov, right? And what did Rachel say? When Yosef was finally born, why is he named Yosef? Asaf Elokim Escher Pasi, because Hashem gathered in my embarrassment. Yosef Tzaddik is the one who gathers in the embarrassment. Yosef is the one who fixes everything, who's mesakein things for real, so that there's nothing left to be ashamed of. There's no embarrassment in the realm of midos. So in other words, in the way that our concept is flowing over here, a person does certain things in tshuva and reaches a level where they start to get arrogant and they think that they're done, that they've fixed everything. They think that they're tzaddikim, right? It's false. It's fantastic. Any tshuva that we do, we should make sure that we say this as an important point. Whenever we do tshuva, whenever we're coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? It's beautiful and totally amazing and the best of the best. But if we get to a point where we think we're done, or where we think that I'm a tzaddik now, I don't have to do any more tshuva, right? That's when it all ends. That's what we're saying over here. When we get to that point and we become we have a false image of ourselves as being a tzaddik, right? That is broken. That's still broken. We haven't fixed ourselves yet. That's where Yosef comes in. We have what to be embarrassed with, right? We're still not perfect. We still have a lot of problems. Comes in Yosef. The tzaddik reveals all of this and shows us where we really are and gives us the ability now to really fix ourselves up and to gather in that embarrassment, right? It's all revealed. So people say this interesting thing about Rabbi Nachman, that beautiful statement, that when people go to Rabbi Nachman has the ability to take those people who are high, not even just arrogant, people who are accomplished and high, and lower them down, while at the same time taking the people who are low and raising them up. This is what Rabbi Nachman does. And so you'll see, if you are blessed to be in Uman during Rosh Hashanah, and you'll see that by the tziyun of Rabbeinu Nachman, by his gravesite, there's thousands of people. You can't move, and you'll be standing beside someone who's a big Rosh Yeshiva, a big rabbi. The different rebbes will come in. Some of the greatest leaders will come in there, and right beside them will be an apparently not religious Israeli, and they'll both be standing there together, and they'll both be crying their eyes out, right? This one is lowered down, and this one is raised up. This is what Rabbi Nachman can do for us, the tzaddik. So this is what we're saying over here, that the tzaddik is able to gather in the embarrassment. What's the embarrassment? Of that I have stuff to still fix, right? He's able to help us with that. V'Shimon einenu, and Shimon is not here either. So Yosef is gone, Shimon is gone, said Yaakov. What does Shimon mean in our flow over here? We know what Yosef means. What does Shimon mean? Hainu, al yedei she'ein lecha bechinas Yosef. Since you don't have Yosef, ein lecha bechinas Shimon. You also don't have Shimon. Shimon hu bechinas. When Shimon was given his name, what did the pasuk say? Ki shama Hashem, ki senua anochi. Hashem heard that I was hated. Hashem heard that I was the hated one. And so that his name was given Shimon, that Hashem heard. But it's connected to this concept of being hated. What does that mean? What is this? How do we understand this in our flow over here? Ki ata einecha senua, because you're not hated. Ki machmas shaloi tikanta es atzmecha, because since you didn't fix yourself up, bevadai einecha yochol lahichiach chir. Now you for sure cannot give toichacha, give rebuke to other people. We have a lot to talk about right here. Because they'll tell you, fix yourself up first. Right? So it goes like this. Everybody knows, L'chaim. Everybody knows that there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that you have to give teichacha to other Yidden. You have to rebuke other Jews. Right? Does everybody do this? Everyone goes around to other Jews giving them rebuke? Okay, don't. Keep listening, please. Don't go right now and turn this off and start rebuking other Jews. It's not a good idea. Right? But there is such a halacha that you have to be moichiach, you have to give teichacha to other Jews. If you see a Jew who's doing something that's against Hashem, that's against Torah, you don't just let them keep on in their behavior and chas v'shalom keep doing avera after avera. You love them, you care about them, so you have to step in, and you have to say, hey, listen, what you're doing is totally wrong. You can't do that. Okay, does that sound like a good thing to do? Not for most people. So says Rabbeinu over here, the halacha says, by the way, you're only allowed to do that if you are on such a level that your teichacha will work on this person. Why? Because the Gemara says that if you try to give teichacha, if you try to give rebuke to somebody, and you're not already on a higher level than that person, then what are they going to say to you? Kishoit atzmecha techila. What are you talking to me for? Fix yourself up first. Don't rebuke me. You're just as bad as me, or worse. Fix yourself up, and then and then come talk to me. Right? Is the Gemara here giving us a picture of human nature? Maybe. But nonetheless, this maybe is just how we are. But also, the Gemara understands that if a person tries to give teichacha, tries to give rebuke to someone, when they're not the right person to give that rebuke, when they're not able to do it in the right way, then it's going to make things worse. Right? So, you're not allowed to give teichacha unless you know that you're able to accomplish what you're supposed to accomplish. So, meaning what? So the Gemara says like this. Therefore, you're not hated. You're not the hated one. You can't give teichacha, you can't give rebuke, so therefore you're not hated. What does this mean? Because anyone who gives rebuke to people, that person is hated. Like Chazal say, the Gemara in Kesubis says like this. This Talmid Chacham, this rabbi, who everyone in the city loves him, right? Everyone loves him. Lav mishum d'mayla tefei. They don't love him because he's on such a high level. That's not why they love. Don't think that they love him and this rabbi is fantastic because he's on such a high level of chachma. Ella mishum deloy moichach lehu b'milei d'shmaya. Why does everyone love him? Because he doesn't go out and rebuke the people for the wrong things they're doing. Nimtza shamaychiach husanu. So you see that if he would do that, then he wouldn't be loved. Then he would be hated. I remember the very first rabbi I had was a very charif Sephardi rabbi, and everyone didn't love him. He was very to the point, and he was very clear, and he didn't hold things back. And as a result, people didn't like him. And he used to always quote this pasuk to me, this Gemara to me. The Talmud says that if you're a rabbi and the people don't hate you, you're not doing a good job. That was what he said. That's not necessarily the way to be a rabbi of a city. But the point that the Gemara is making over here, the thing that we're trying to understand, the reason Rabbi Nachman's bringing this, is to tell us that there's this aspect. When someone is on such a level that they can rebuke others, then that person will have this aspect of sinua, of being disliked. Right? So if you don't have Yosef, if you don't have the aspect of fixing yourself up, like Yosef did, Yosef the Tzaddik, right? And you haven't become to that level, then you can't be Shimon either. You can't be the one who's hated. You can't be the one who gives teichach because you're not at that level. Right? You're missing all of these steps. So, ve'es Binyamin tikachu. And then the next thing that the pasuk says, and you also want to take Binyamin now? You want to take Binyamin? That's what Yaakov Avinu said. Right? In the Pashat Pshat is, Yosef is already gone. Now Shimon's in jail in Egypt. And now you want to take Binyamin back also? That's what Yaakov says to them. So on a deeper level, what does this Binyamin mean? Ze more al gadlus. This is referring to ego, to being a Baal Gaiva. Ki Perish Rashi, because Rashi explains over there, Binyamin al Shem Eretz Yisrael. Ben Yamin. Binyamin is called by the name of Binyamin, and it has connected to Eretz Yisrael. Ben Yamin, because of the land of Israel, which is called Ben Yamin, the son of my right hand, right? And the right is powerful, the right is high, the right is strong. Ve'eretz Yisrael hu gavoya mikol ha'aratzos, and the land of Israel is higher than all the other lands. So why did he give him the name Ben Yamin? So Binyamin was the only one of the 12 sons who was born in Eretz Yisrael. So he gets the name of Ben Yamin, referring to Eretz Yisrael, right? And we say that Eretz Yisrael is higher than all other lands, obviously in spirituality, right? But this represents godless, greatness, being high up. In this case, it represents gaiva, being arrogant. Hainu. It's not enough for you that you don't have all the other stuff we're talking about. You don't have Yosef. First of all, you don't have Yaakov. You don't have the seichel, looking into yourself and figuring out what you have to do to yourself. And you don't have Yosef, fixing up those things that are broken. And because of that, you don't have Shimon either. You're not at that level where you can rebuke other people and help out other people. And you wanna take Binyamin now? Im kol zeh ves Binyamin tikachu shatem loichim la'atzmechem gadlus. You want to take gadlus onto yourself? You want to say, now I'm the tzaddik? I'm the one who can daven for everybody? I want to be the leader? I want to be the melech? You have nothing, and you want to be the melech? Ki hakol noifa the siyam haseichel v'shemeichil alai hayu kulana. On me is everything. Ki hakol neifel alai, ki kol hamisgaye, chachmastay mistaleches mimeni. Everyone who becomes arrogant, his chachma leaves him, his wisdom leaves him. So in other words, you hear what's going on over here, Rabbi Isai. This pasuk is showing us exactly the steps that Rabbeinu told us about getting to this level of going up and up and up and up. What can happen if you don't do it the right way? How you can remain broken, how you can become an arrogant person, how you can become a false leader who bases everything on authority and rulership. Chas v'shalom. So one of the commentaries asks this question. Listen to this, and we'll finish with this. Maybe we'll do a little bit more. Ask this question: How can we use this pasuk? How can we use this situation of the brothers of Yosef to prove our path over here? These brothers of Yosef were amongst the biggest tzaddikim that ever existed. How can we take the name of Shimon and use it in this way? How can we take, how can we say that Binyamin, we take the name of Binyamin and use it in this negative way to teach our story over here? Like we're talking about, we're trying to explain about people who are arrogant and who don't use their seichel and who are on such a low level that they can't rebuke other people. And we're using the holiest people that ever existed, the Shiftei Ka, the Shvatim, the tribes, right? It doesn't really make sense. So one of the answers that the commentaries bring is that the reason why we're able to use them as this example is because there is one place where they stumbled. Where's the one place that they stumbled? Is that they were not mevatel themselves to Yosef et Tzaddik. The one thing that they didn't do, that they couldn't do, is they couldn't see themselves as lower than Yosef. They couldn't recognize that Yosef was the tzaddik and that they needed him and his prayers and that they couldn't do it themselves. That's the one thing that they did, right? And that's the whole essence of everything we've been talking about so far, is that we have to return the tefillah to the tzaddik hador. We have to realize that we are not perfect and we are not tzaddikim. And we have to connect to the tzaddik hador, to the tzaddikim, in order to be able to have yeshuas, to have nisim happen in the world, to have, like the Gemara said, when someone has a sick person in their house, who do they go to? They go to the tzaddik to pray for them. Our whole history is connecting to tzaddikim, and this is the first place. Yosef came to them as a young boy and said, I had these dreams, and in my dreams, with the sheaves, or whether it's the stars, and your things were all bowing down to me. And Yosef was not saying this from a place of gaiva. Yosef was explaining what was happening, and Yaakov understood what was happening, and Yaakov wanted it to happen, right? And so it says, the Torah says, V'ha'aviv shamar sadavar. Yaakov really knew what was going on, and he wanted it to happen. And so that's the one thing that they couldn't do, and they had to get rid of him. And that's what happened in the story. They could not accept the tzaddik. That is the story. You hear this? They couldn't accept the tzaddik. They couldn't accept that the tzaddik had something that they didn't have. And Yosef, of course, becomes the Torah paradigm for the tzaddik. Just like we said that the Zohar says that the tzaddik stands in the tzidor, in the pipeline of everything that comes into the world. And so all the shefa, all of the sustenance that comes into the world comes through the tzaddik. Just like Yosef was made to be the mashber. He was the one who took control of all of the food in the world, literally, and gave it out to everyone and made sure that everyone had enough. Right? The story of Yosef in the Chumash as supplying the entire world with sustenance is a physical description of what the tzaddik does spiritually. And in the end, what happened? Those holy tzaddikim, the shvatim, they came back and they realized, yes, now we understand that Yosef is the tzaddik. Yosef is higher than us. There's something that we don't have that the tzaddik has. And everyone, this is the main lesson of this whole Torah, really, is that we have to understand and accept and be happy with the fact that we are not the tzaddik hador. We're not Rabbi Nachman, right? We're not Yosef et Tzaddik. And that's okay. Why? Because this is what Hashem made us. We have a job to do. We have struggles, we have tikkunim, we all have something that we have to do. And the world cannot exist without any one of us. And all of the tikkunim that we have to make are all a part of what has to be done. And each one, as we said a few Torahs ago, each one of our tefillahs, our prayers, each one of our mitzvahs, literally, well, not literally, I guess, metaphysically, builds a brick that is then put up to the upper worlds. And the Bechina of Moshe Rabbeinu, the job of the tzaddik is to take those bricks and put them in the right spot, to build everything. Every single person is necessary, and every single person is building the Beis HaMikdash, and is building up the Shechina with all of our Torah and our mitzvahs. Every single one of us here right now, whenever we daven, whenever we do a mitzvah, we're fixing the world. We're doing amazing things in the upper worlds, right? And every single part is necessary. And the tzaddik has a bigger job, but that's okay. A person should never feel like they're not important, like their avodah is not important. Chas v'shalom, every ounce is required to bring Mashiach. Every little thing is required to bring Mashiach. So let's just finish up quickly here with this last part, and then we'll start clapping hands next week. It says, V'ha'etza ha'yeutza, levatel ha'gaiva. And what is the advice, the main advice to get rid of arrogance, gaiva? Shi ha'avodah zara. Gaiva, arrogance, is compared to avodah zara, is the same thing as avodah zara. Like the pasuk says, Toyavas Hashem kol geva leiv. The pasuk says in Mishlei that it's an abomination to Hashem, anyone who is arrogant. Being arrogant is an abomination to Hashem. That lashon of Toyavas Hashem, is the same lashon as avodah zara. Just like avodah zara is a toyeva, arrogance is a toyeva. Avodah zara and arrogance are the same thing. And Chazal say in the Gemara in Saita, they darshan this, that gaiva, arrogance, is considered avodah zara. So how do we get rid of this? Ha'ikar hu ayedei hiskarvus letzadikim. The main thing is, the main lesson is to come close to tzadikim, kamuva betikunim, like it's brought in the Tikunei Zohar. Pasuk says, B'serua de'ihu rucha is avir el acher. It's through the concept of trua. Trua means the shofar blast. De'ihu rucha, which is ruach. That is how el acher, other gods, the avodah zara, is removed. How do we see such a thing? But tzaddik, hi bechinas rucha. A tzaddik is called ruach, spirit. Kamosha Kasav, like the pasuk says in Bamidbar that we said before, ish asher ruach boy. The tzaddik is called an ish asher ruach boy, a person who has ruach in him. Val yadai nichna ruach gavoya, and it's through the tzaddik that a ruach gavoya, arrogance, can be flattened. El acher, which is also avodah zara, other gods, el acher. V'naisa me'acher echad, and we make into acher echad. So like this. The Tikkun Zohar says that the tzaddik is compared in the Aleph base to the little koitz at the back of the Dalet. So everybody knows the letter Dalet, it goes kind of like this and like this, like a resh, right? But it has a little thing that sticks out the back. A resh just goes round down, right? But a Dalet goes the same thing, but it has a little thing that sticks out the back. I don't know what you call it in English, but in Hebrew it's called a koitz, right? The kutzo shel yud. This is the kutzo shel daled. That's what the tzaddik is. In the Tikkun Zohar says tzaddik is the koitz of the daled. So why? Shemimena arba ruchos, kamosha kosu, because from him come the four directions. Kamosha kosu, like the pasuk says, koyamar Hashem me arba ruchos boi haruach. From the four corners of the wind come ruach. So, but like this, the most amazing thing is about this whole part over here. We see the tzaddik is ruach, but you have el acher. That means other gods. El acher, and you have Hashem echad, right? Acher and echad are almost the exact same word. Aleph, chet, and either a resh or a dalid. The only thing separating el acher from Hashem echad is that little koitz, that little thing that sticks off the end of the dalid. And this is what the tzaddik brings over here. This is what the tzaddik brings. He breaks the ruach of the arrogant and brings it down and brings in the ruach of Hashem. We had a whole Torah last time on ruach, if you remember this concept. But you see over here also something that's hidden deep in this idea is that it's very hard sometimes to tell the difference between a true leader and a false leader. Sometimes you have a person who looks the part, and looks like a holy person, and seems to be that tzaddik, right? But then you find out that person is a bal gaiva, is tremendously arrogant, and the difference between the tzaddik and the arrogant false leader can be just that little bit, right? But that's that little bit that the tzaddik does that breaks el acher. Avodah zara. What's avodah zara? Is arrogance. The tzaddik breaks the arrogance, breaks the avodah zarah, and turns it into Hashem Echad. Because the tzaddik is completely humble and is mevatel himself completely, nullifies himself completely to the Ribono Shel Olam, and becomes like nothingness, becomes just a channel, just an open vessel that can receive elokus, that can bring godliness into the world. And that's the difference. That's why the tzaddik's that little thing, because he's mevatel all of this arrogance by being small, by being nothing, by just receiving what Hashem has and not trying to rule over other people, not trying to have authority, not trying to do anything for themselves in the world, just to make a Kiddush Hashem, just to bring holiness into the world, Elokus. That's what the tzaddik does, and that's this koitz of the letter of the Ois Daled. V'zeh loshen teruah, and this is why what the loshen of teruah means. The teruah of the shofar blast. Loshen teroim b'shevet barzel. Who would have thought? The loshen of teruah, the word teruah, means a shofar blast, right? Everybody knows this? When you're standing on Rosh Hashanah, tekiah, teruah. Teruah is a shofar blast, right? I don't know how it's possible that it has this meaning also, but the pasuk in Tehillim says, teroim b'shevet barzel. You shall smash them, break them, with the rod of iron, with the rod of iron. Teruah, shofar blast, also means to break, to smash. Why? So why is the tzaddik called b'teruah de'ihu ruach? So we said this pasuk, this from the Tikkunei Zohar, b'teruah de'ihu rucha is avir el acher. It's with a teruah, with a shofar blast, which is ruach, that we can eliminate idolatry, meaning eliminate arrogance. It's because the teruah is the tzaddik and the ruach is the tzaddik. Teruah means to smash, and this tzaddik is the ish asher ruach boy. So just like the shofar blast is blown with ruach, and that's how you get a teruah. The ruach is also the tzaddik, and the teruah is also to smash. So the tzaddik smashes el acher. The tzaddik smashes avodah zarah. The tzaddik smashes arrogance, and is able to bring a person down, to bring himself down, to become the tzaddik, and then to help others to be brought down. And then he's able to break this. That's the end of this section, and we'll next week, by the way, we're going to see some awesome stuff about clapping hands and Kabbalistic things that to do with clapping hands and lifting up our feet in dancing that are very, very deep and very special. But as a takeaway from today's shiur, let's all remember this. Let's all remember this. That the tzaddik is the one who is able to break avodah zarah, which means to us is able to break our arrogance. And we all have arrogance on some level. And you can have the most timid person who is afraid of talking to other people. And you might think that that's the last person in the world that's going to have any arrogance. Really, they're full of arrogance. They're full of arrogance. They're full of ego. Why can't they talk to anyone else? Because they're afraid of being smashed. They're afraid. They have fear of interaction with other people, because their ego is so fragile, right? That it doesn't allow them to go out and be with other people. Why? Because of that ego. That ego is there to build themselves up, to protect them from being hurt, right? That's a different kind of ego. You can have this thing that in some type of pop psychology they call the protector ego, where you have a person who because they're so fragile and they're so low, they build themselves up with a fake ego. They build themselves up to be mean to other people, right? And that ego is there not because they think they're great, not because they think they're amazing. It's the opposite. They think they're nothing. They have such low self-esteem that they need to build up an ego to be able to protect themselves. Ego affects many people in many different ways. It can be protector. It can be narcissistic, right? We all have this in some little way. And so we should all, from wherever we are at the moment, we should know that by learning the Torahs of Rabbi Nachman and connecting to Rabbi Nachman on a deep way, staying far away from from false leaders, Meforsamim shel sheker. I just read an article, I got to tell you this. The holy Tzaddik, Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter. You heard of him? So he's one of the biggest Breslov manhigim, and he's the Rosh Yeshiva of one of the Kabbalistic yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. He's universally accepted as a big tzaddik and as a genius. This person had a tremendously difficult life. He had a child with disabilities, and he lost some of his children while he was still alive. And he was always the most humble, quiet person, and he lived in squalor in Eretz Yisrael. And later on in life, people started realizing how great he was. And he started to be raised up, and he was able to move out of his tiny little apartment on the top floor of a building that he had to walk up and down every single day. And he was able to, and people started knowing who he was. And he had a big yeshiva, and he started living in a nicer house, and people started coming to him, lineups to come and see him, to come see this tzaddik, right? And so he wrote in a letter to someone, he said that he faced a lot of challenges in his life. His life wasn't easy, and he had all these difficult things, but he said, now I am facing the biggest challenge that I've ever faced. Now that I've become a mufursam shel sheker. Now that I've become a false famous person, this person is the biggest tzaddik and the most humble person around. And he was running away from this aspect of being a mufursam shel sheker, of being someone who people look at as a tzaddik, right? And it's something that is very, very big in Breslov. And one of the reasons why there's never been a Rebbe since Rabbi Nachman is because we know what a real tzaddik is. And everyone else has to run away from gaiva, from arrogance, from honor. And so many times people start to develop too much of a personality, too much of a following. It's often looked at in a negative way by Breslovers. So we should all merit that we should grow in our ruchnias, in our connection to Rabbi Nachman, and Rabbi Nachman should help us to lose our gaiva, our arrogance, and become closer to the Ribono Shel Olam and make all the tikkunim that have to happen in the world through us. Be'ezras Hashem. Any questions? Shalom, yeah.
Okay, so I wrote a couple questions in the chat.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see. Sorry.
Do you want to just
those
and then mute everybody?
What are some characteristics of being close to a tzaddik that is fundamentally different from how people seem to idealize modern-day secular charismatic leaders? Do we have to return all tefillah to the tzaddik ador, or just Hashem sfasai tiftach? Right, very good questions. Okay, so Shalom asked two questions, which are good questions. First is, how does...
Because there's a lot of backup.
Yeah, 1 second. Hold on. Okay, everyone's muted again. So the first question, what are some characteristics of being close to a tzaddik that is different from how people seem to idealize modern-day secular charismatic leaders? Very good. So this answer may surprise you, but it can be the same thing that we're talking about over here. In other words, there are mefursamim shel sheker who look like a tzaddik and who develop a following even, and who people run after. And it's false, and it's nothing more than an idealization. It's nothing more than, I hate to say it, but what do we say in the secular world when we really are into a certain person, like a certain sports player? People will say, that guy's my idol. They literally say, that guy's my idol. Like, that's my avodah zarah, right? That's what people say. So that can happen also in the religious world also, right? So the thing that I say most, and I have to keep saying, is we have to make sure that we find the right tzaddikim. And, we have, Baruch Hashem, we have the Holy Torah of Rabbi Nachman to help to guide us. But the main thing that we have to look for, this is the main thing, and it's like the key, is we have to look for humility. We have to look for a person who's humble. And it's that person who displays these characteristics. It's like Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter, for example, right? Who has always tried to run away from honor. right? And people start lining up at his door. And he doesn't go, he has no flair. He doesn't go and, put on a show for anybody. He's just quiet and remains a tzaddik like this. And there are people like this in the world. And they remain somewhat under the radar. And there's people who know who they are, and then that's how you connect to them. I know, Shalom, you've had some experiences being directed to certain tzaddikim. But the ones who are real, you can tell, and the ones who are fake, you can feel it a little bit. You can sense it. There's something there that person is. He's too commercial. He's showing himself off. He's like a peacock, So the answer is that when we have the right tzaddik, we know it's the right tzaddik, and we know how to connect to that tzaddik. And as far as do we have to return all tefillah to the tzaddik hador, just Hashem's fasai tiftach, right? So we have we've had in shiurim before a pretty detailed explanation of this, but let's just say a very quick version of it, and that is that we see from the Holy Zohar HaKadosh that really a yid should do what they can to bind themselves and their tefillahs to the living tzaddikim and the tzaddikim who are already in Shalayim. Why? Because we first of all, this is the way that the Zohar explains it in Parshas Pekudei. Very clearly, the Zohar says that the tzaddik takes our tefillahs and with them builds the Shechina and builds up the Mishkan and builds up the Malchus of Kedusha. And we can daven and our tefillahs can be something. But if we connect ourselves to the holiest of the holies, the biggest tzaddikim, then their spiritual forces are on a different plane. And they can take those tefillahs and put them in the right place. They can help us to get there. It's like if you have an expert in something, you can we have a friend, Yitzmo, who does stonework. He builds these beautiful patios, and he's like an artist, right? He does beautiful work, right? So I could just go to Home Depot and buy a bunch of stones and throw them on my driveway, and what? I could do it. Yeah, I could do it. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be nice. Or I could, either get him to do it, or I could use his expertise. I could have him guide things and put them in the places they're supposed to be, and then I'll have a beautiful driveway, right? So too, I'm a baby, right? I'm a little baby. I can say a tefillah, I can pray, and it can do things. But if I connect myself to those people that are on the highest of the high, then my tefillah can go places that I wouldn't be able to get it to. There's a story that someone told me. I've told you guys before about the Kabbalist called the Chalban, right? The milkman. The story that I was going to tell, I'll just tell very quickly because it's super geschmack story. It's a great story. So the Chalban, he was a tremendous Kabbalist, a Tzaddik, who was nifter about just like 6 months ago, something like maybe a year ago, very recently. And he was called the Chalban, that means milkman, because for like 50 years or something, he worked in a milk factory. I think he might have owned the factory, but he was a milk producer. And he wore, a regular hat like a milk person. He was clean shaven. And this person was literally probably, if not the biggest tzaddik in the world at the time, one of the tops. Huge Kabbalist, a huge makubal, and mamish, like he wrote svarim, and only later in life did he become known as who he really was. But so my friend Gabi told me this story, that there was a Breslover who was making a bris. I think I told you this story before, Shalom, but there was a Breslov who was making a bris, and the Chalban was the sandak, was holding the baby during the bris, right? And so the Breslover, he made the bracha. The father makes a bracha when you have the bris. L'hachnisoi b'vrisoi shel Avram Avinu is the bracha, right? To bring this baby into the covenant of Avraham, our father. And so afterwards, the Chalban went up to this person and was like, "Whoa, who are you?" And the guy's like, "What are you talking about? Who am I? I'm Shlomi. I don't know what his name was. I'm Shlomi, right?" And the Chalban says, "Well, how did you know all of the kavanas and all of the spiritual workings of what happens during a bris?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I saw during the bris, I saw how your tefillah, your bracha went through all the olamas and went through all the places that it was supposed to go, and got to the highest levels, you know." And he was surprised that something only like a big tzaddik would be able to do. And Shlomi said to him, "Listen, I don't know what you're talking about. All I did was before the bris, I said, Hareini Makasher es atzmi. I was Makasher myself to Rabbi Nachman before I made my bracha. And that's all I did. I'm a simple Jew. What should I tell you?" And it's this is like the story. This is the story of what we're talking about right now. Of attaching oneself to a tzaddik, and the tzaddik pulling that bracha up through all those channels exactly to the highest places where it's supposed to go. And you need the Chalban to be able to tell you that it really happened. But we have emunas chachamim and emunas tzaddikim, and we know that the Torah that Rabbi Nachman gave us is the holiest, highest Torah, and we should all merit to keep taking it in and keep helping it to change us and to make us more humble and to be able to connect to Hashem on the deepest levels. Be'ezus Hashem.